in the background area, everybody has a story, and
Right.
the crime that they've committed should not define them. And so when the Second Chance Initiative, really became a thing in our industry, I really supported it going back to that incident. I mean, the Second Chance movement it's good for the applicant, it's good for the client, it's good for society, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, it's good for the industry, which shows a humanity
Right.
and a service that's provided.
Welcome to Behind the Screens, Conversations with Background Screening Pros. I'm Les Rosen, your host, and I'm excited to have you here. On this podcast, we chat with the people who know the background screening world inside and out. Executives, industry experts, legal pros, and more. We dive into their personal stories and insights to give you a real look at what's happening behind the scenes. Whether you work in the screening industry or are just curious, Behind the Screens bring you the real, unfiltered conversations from the people who make it all happen. Stick around for stories you won't hear anywhere else. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of Behind the Screens, our conversations with background screening pros. And today I'm delighted to have a person to give you a little sense of history who was a tested veteran and a thought leader before I had even heard of the background screening industry. A gentleman who's been on the forefront and is still in the forefront, who I think you all know, but we're going to find out a lot more about today. I'd like to introduce our guest today, Mr. Fred Giles. Fred, welcome to the program.
Yeah, well, thank you. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure. So let me start off with the first question. I just got through looking at your impressive resume and all of the positions of leadership and responsibility you've held over the past years. And I have to ask you, what would you consider to be your superpower when it comes to leading organizations and people to success? Because you have quite a record.
Well, thank you. I guess two key areas. One is listening. You can never do enough of that. Mm-hmm. And making sure that employees have the tools and the training to do their job and letting them do it.
Okay. So listen, hear before you get heard, and make sure that your folks can do the job. They have the tools, the training, the rope, whatever they need to do it. That's fantastic. Yeah. So, yes, first we'll start where you are now. Tell us about your current role. What are you doing? What do you find most interesting about it? What's happening right now with Fred Giles?
Well, right now, I'm one of the auditors for the PBSA Accreditation program, and what I really enjoy about that is when the accreditation program was conceived, it was conceived to lift up the industry, to make sure that the industry had legs and could survive. And I really, I feel honored to play a role in helping that happen.
And so as an auditor, what is it you do? But I don't need to go into a lot of detail, but just generally speaking, kind of how would you describe it?
Well, there are two phases to the audit. One is a desk audit, in which I review the submissions that show conformity to the various clauses in the accreditation program that they're applying for. And then there's a virtual audit where we get together on a Zoom call, and I test areas within the clause to make sure that they're not only talking the talk, but walking the walk.
Yeah. I mean, it must be interesting because as an auditor, you meet so many different people, so many different companies. You get to see the amount of energy and enthusiasm and the dedication that so many companies have towards what they're doing. And that I think that would be impressive to do that.
It's interesting, and even before PBSA, I think a lot of us believed that we had the secret sauce and we knew how to do it better than everyone else, and everyone else was a bum, and come to us if you want it done correctly.
Right.
I'll tell you, there's some awfully good people out there.
Oh, that's great. And it's also interesting to me how a lot of people will find different paths to the same result. They may do it differently, but they may do it their own way, but they end up doing it the right way. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of integrity in the industry, and that's a key feature in the service that we provide.
And we don't want to make this whole program about accreditation, but just off the top of your head, what do you see as the big benefit when you see firms and you watch them go through the audit process and you test the audit? What do you find the benefit is to the screening firm and to the folks at the screening firm and going through the audit process?
I firmly believe that every company that goes through the accreditation program comes out a better company. Having to go through and think through what their processes are, to document those processes, to train their employees on those processes, and make sure their clients understand what it is they can expect from them. It just helps them to deliver a superior product.
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting with accreditation because I assume your goal is to help them get accredited. I mean, if they fall short, you'll point that out, but it's not a gotcha situation. I mean, PBSA wants people to achieve that accreditation, right? You're there to help them as well.
That is correct. Of course, I can't speak for PBSA or the BSCC as an independent auditor, but that is correct. The concept of the program is that we want people to get through and we want people to be accredited, to earn the accreditation.
Right. So you've had a fascinating career path. Why don't you fill us in a little bit about your career path that got you from your start, I'll let you talk about that, to where you are now and some of the various things you've done in your career.
Well, my undergraduate and graduate training actually was in education.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
And after serving time in the trenches, both as a student teacher and as a substitute teacher, I decided that education was not for me. So from there, I moved and I joined the police department in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And there I served various roles. I was a patrolman and I was also crime prevention officer. So I did a lot of radio announcements and public speaking and trend analysis, that kind of thing. And from there, I had an opportunity to become a polygraph examiner.
Oh.
So I was a polygraph examiner for 10 years. We did a lot of work for various police departments, the North Carolina Division of Prisons, defense attorneys, employers, and even a number of studies for NSA on the efficacy of polygraph. Then along came the Polygraph Protection Act of 1988.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I was working with a company that was acquired by Pinkerton. And Pinkerton had a little unit, was an internal service unit, losing about $1 million a year.
Oh my gosh, okay.
And they needed someone to run it. And because of my background, I was selected, and that's what launched my career in backgrounds.
So this little unit in Pinkerton, losing $1 million, that was a background screening unit back in the early 90s before background screening had really taken off.
That's exactly right. And it was an internal unit doing a horrible job. And we actually had to fight for permission to make it a commercial offering, which we did, and ultimately took that organization that was losing $1 million and sold it for $54 million to Choice Point. And that was a bargain price because the chairman of Securitas, who had recently purchased Pinkerton, didn't understand the American background industry, and he wanted out.
Wow. Now, I mean, you have to unpack that. There's a lot to that. I mean, first of all, one of the revelations is, and some of our listeners may not realize that, but a substantial part of the modern background screening industry had its roots in polygraph examination.
Sure,
basically because of the 1998 law. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then you took a unit losing money. This is like incredible. And took it into a unit that sold at bargain basement prices for $58 million, where it could have sold for a lot more. It's just incredible.
Yeah. And, honestly, I can't take full credit for that. We had a great team. We had some wonderful people there that made that happen. Yeah. But that was an exciting ride.
Wow. So then at that point, from Pinkerton, you were with, you then went on to other things as well?
That is correct.
After Pinkerton? Yeah. Tell us a little bit about that. Just take a quick summary.
Yeah, after Pinkerton, I became president of the official provider source that was part of the Tizzy group, DAC and some of the others, and it was the group that owned it. It was running towards the end of their time frame, and so I did that. And when that sold, I was invited to run the operation at Wackenhut based on contacts that I had at Pinkerton. So I did that and ended up at, a few other companies after that, but it was always a fun ride.
Fantastic. Well, is quite the career. One of the things I like to ask, is there a lesson that you learned early on that still sticks with you today from your early days as a police officer or working at Pinkerton and so forth?
And it really goes back to the time when I was a police officer. So one of the arrests that I had, I was called to take a report about a stolen vehicle. And I went to the parking lot, spoke to the owner, and I was finishing up the report on this stolen maroon Checker. Not exactly a car you see all the time in Chapel Hill. And as I was finishing up the report, into the parking lot comes a maroon Checker. So I went over to the car, and the driver exited the vehicle and started briskly walking away, and I almost had to run to catch him, but I didn't have to, and caught up with him, arrested him for grand theft auto, which was actually an overcharge in any event. And I took him down to the magistrate's office to complete that process and see if he could get bonded out one way or another. And as I was talking to him, we were waiting our time in line, and I said, do you have anybody to come and help you out? And he says, no, I don't have any friends. And I said, well, what about your parents? Because he was, 18, 19. You think they'd come down and help you out here? He said, no, they don't care about me. And I said, look, at that point, the Chapel Hill jail had been condemned. So I had to take him to the Orange County jail, which was not exactly a Marriott. I explained to him that you're not going to meet some very nice people there, and you might want to reconsider. And he said, well, at least I'll be able to meet some people.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
And I thought to myself at that time, and it stuck with me in the background area, everybody has a story, and the crime that they've committed should not define them. And so when the Second Chance Initiative, really became a thing in our industry, I really supported it going back to that incident. The Second Chance movement it's good for the applicant, it's good for the client, it's good for society, and quite frankly, at the end of the day, it's good for the industry, which shows a humanity and a service that's provided. So I would say, as it relates to the background industry, that one event with that one pitiful kid had a real effect.
Oh, that's interesting. And since then, we've gone through Ban the Box, we've gone through Fair Chance Hiring. Now there's the clean slate rules that are coming on. So there's a number of rules that I think that reflects exactly what you said, that, I've often said that there's a job for everyone, but not everyone's entitled to every job. So we're helping employers sort who's appropriate for what. But everyone needs a job and has to have a job. Yeah, well, that's interesting. So in the time you've been in the background business, as I said, you were already a thought leader and a leader in the background screening before I got into the industry or even heard of it. What did you find that you liked most about the screening industry? What kept you in it or attracted you to it? And once you were in it, kept you focused on it?
Well, it's the same thing I liked about the other professions I've had, in that it's the challenge and variety of learning about other industries in order to serve them. So you're not in the same grind every day, because you have to understand how an industry works before you can service their needs in this area. So I would say that's a major feature. But the other one, which is purely personal, is just the lifelong friendships that have come out of the industry.
Well, that's interesting. And I assume some of those friendships came through, then NAPBS, now PBSA, right?
Exactly.
And we'll talk about a little bit about your stint as a chair of that organization. So in looking back, what do you, in your mind, when you look back at your career and background screening and all the things you've done, stands out that in your mind is something that to you that's most significant, or that you smile about the most, you're most proud of? What kind of like boom comes to the top of your head?
Well, you touched on one of it, serving as chair of PBSA, NAPBS, certainly is a major item there. But also, I would have to say, going back to that early industry experience, the growth of Pinkerton Services Group, and how well so many of the key players have done in the industry and the contributions they made to the industry. I think about how those people have spread throughout, and just, it makes me smile.
Oh, that's great, because there's a core group of people you worked with. They went on to other firms and helped grow other firms and helped other people. That's fantastic. Well, so let me ask you, what role has PBSA played in your career? Well, you were chair in what year again? I'm at the point where I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so I can't remember what year people were chairs anymore.
You know what? I can't either. But it was actually for a year and a half, because that was during the time that we had changed the structure in terms of the voting to make it to coincide with the other things. So in terms of what PBSA has made, of course, there was being chair, but before that, also being chair of the BSCC, playing a role in the early committees to create the accreditation program. I mentioned briefly that I had been a polygraph examiner, and that profession died for a whole lot of reasons. But one of the reasons it died was that it was poorly structured to present itself. And there was a lot of Wild West cowboy, not good stuff going on. It was poorly regulated, and that poor regulation was used as one of the excuses to shut it down. It played no role whatsoever in trying to influence legislation and influence protections for consumers. And so I was determined, having adopted this profession, that I wouldn't let that happen to my profession again if I could help it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Because, we all could tell stories about some of the old-time polygraphers and some of the things they did. We won't, that's a whole different program. But
yes, it is. It'd be a fun one.
It would be a fun one. I've actually seen it. As a criminal attorney, I attended polygraphs, and I, seen them do the old magic trick, and whatever, different things like that. But that's a laudable goal. You're right. That's a lot of what's keeping background screening, protecting it as an industry, is the fact that we formed an organization, and we're active and we're engaged. Well, that kind of brings me to the segment where we play challenges and changes and challenges. And so, given your time or perspective in the industry, before we move on, just sort of top of mind, 30 seconds, what do you see in your overview as the biggest changes in the background industry, and what sort of does Fred Giles see as the biggest challenges coming up in the industry?
Okay, well, I'll give you kind of a bullet point list of the changes. Back in the early days, we had banks of fax machines instead of secure internet platforms. So there's been a lot of consolidation, both of companies and of public records researchers. We managed literally hundreds of researchers across the country. And now we have regional or national wholesale providers. It's a different process. We've had evolving platforms to better integrate into client processes that encourage a stickiness that we didn't have before. Then, of course, the growing privacy legislation and second chance initiatives that we've talked about. And that moves into the challenges, because those growing privacy legislations and second chance initiatives are major challenges. Growing product offerings is a challenge, and the big one that's on the horizon right now, I think, is coming to grips with the promises, the challenges, and the threats of blockchain. how that's going to change the industry. So that's yet to be fleshed out. There are some early players in that field, but I think it's going to be a major factor.
So we'll call that TBD, to be determined.
That's exactly right.
Right. So I want to move away from background screening. I can't help but notice. I mean, Fred, I've known you for years. You've always been a button-down white shirt type of guy, clean-shaven, semi-military haircut. And I'm looking at you now, and it's like you're a totally different guy. So what's happening in your world where I guess being semi-retired allows you a little more freedom, huh?
Yeah, retirement does wonderful things, and with that comes freedom.
Well, let me ask you, outside of background screening, I mean, we all know you from PBSA and in the various firms you've been involved with, but outside of background screening, can you share a little bit about you personally, your hobbies or your interests outside of work, things you do for fun?
Well, other than children and grandchildren, which you have to count.
Right, exactly, yeah.
I do enjoy target shooting and sporting clays and golf. I wish I were better at sporting clays or golf, but I nevertheless enjoy getting out there and participating in those things.
So what's by target shooting and sporting clays? I mean, I've seen that on TV. I've never actually done it. What is that? What do you do? Where do you do it, and how does that work?
Yeah, target shooting is just that. I mean, shooting at a target, and it's a Zen activity because you're focused on that target. Everything else is blacked out. You're focused on your breathing, on your body position, and focused on that target. Sporting clays is more kinetic. Sporting clays are the clay pigeons, those little orange discs. And in sporting clays, you're walking a course, and at each station, there are multiple launchers. And, they may come from behind you, they may come from your left, from your right, in front of you, they may be high, they may be low. And so as you move to each station, you're confronting a different set of targets and a different set of movements that you have to anticipate.
I've seen this on TV, but I've never actually done it in person. So what type of, is it a shotgun or what type of gun?
Yeah, it's a shotgun, and you're using a target load. It's not a hunting load, but it's a target load in order to break the clay that's in the air somewhere in front of you.
So I do remember one James Bond movie where he said shoot or release and kind of lackadaisically looked one way and shot the other way and shot every clay. I mean, is that Hollywood, or can you do that?
It's pretty much Hollywood, and I can't do that, although my son-in-law comes close to being able to do that.
Oh, that's incredible. So are there courses then, I mean, that you go to? It's not on your own property. You go to courses and it's a...
Oh, yeah. You go to courses that are set up, and some of them you walk, and some of them they actually have golf carts that you travel to the different stations. They're spaced that far apart, so it's different.
Oh, that's great. So grandkids and shooting clays, and then, of course, I take it you're in Florida now, I think you mentioned.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so Florida and golfing go hand in hand.
That's correct.
And that's great. And so that plus accreditation audits keep you pretty busy, right?
Yes, they do.
All right. So time for the play game we call Fun Facts. And this is where I put the guest on the hot seat and say, tell us something about yourself, unrelated to background screening, that people may not even know, they may not even guess. What would that be?
Well, since semi-retirement, and because my wife is able to work remotely in what she does, we purchased a fifth-wheel RV, and we load up the Harley Davidson trike and take off for parts unknown in the RV to get out of Florida during hurricane season. So right. That's...
And you mentioned the Harley Davidson trike? Is that what? Did I hear that right? Okay. So I'm going to assume it's a three-wheeled Harley Davidson.
It is a three-wheel Harley Davidson. Yeah, I had motorcycles for years, and I broke my toe taking a riding course And my wife didn't feel comfortable on two wheels anymore. So,
All right. Now, we're not talking about training wheels, right? We're talking about what, two wheels in the back or a passenger car?
Two wheels in the back and a wheel in the front. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've heard there's all sorts of things about you I never knew. I never knew that you were a Harley fan and that you would go gallivanting around the countryside to get out of hurricane season. But hurricane season is June through December. I mean, are you out of Florida 6 months a year, or just when you get your 5-day warning, you're jump in the RV and get going?
At least through November. Yeah, typically we're gone June through November and then come back.
Okay, that's great. So you're on your hurricane avoidance tour at that point.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Oh, that's great. Well, Fred, this has been great talking to you and finding out more about you. You, in addition to everything else I thought I knew from just knowing you over the years, I mean, you have a lot more details, and I appreciate you sharing them. So let me ask you, based on all the experience you've had, if there's someone who is either new to the industry or thinking about getting in the industry, or maybe they've been in the industry 2 or 3 years and trying to decide whether they want to stay or advance or go someplace else, what would your advice be? What would you tell people to do in terms of how to get ahead in this industry, how to make yourself more valuable, and the advantages or disadvantages? What's your take on that?
Well, number one would be join PBSA. And don't just join, attend the sessions, the workshops, volunteer, because that's when you do a lot of the learning. And I would say stay the extra day at the mid-year and go to the fly-in and meet your representatives, understand what the legislative process is, and that, advances your career and the health of the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously I did the very first fly-in, and the very first time we went to Washington, and then we went to agencies, and the few times I've done it since, that is the most fun. I mean, you go to the Russell building or the various Senate office buildings or congressional office buildings, and meet the people and staff or agencies. I mean, it's just a blast.
And really, walk through all these hallways you recognize on TV.
Yeah, exactly. and in places where the interviews are held, and you talk to people, and there's a chance for an impact.
Yes.
And that was your route, because you were involved early in then NAPBS, then PBSA, and you started the route with committees, as you said, and start with a committee member, and then a co-chair, a chair, board, and then move up the board, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
So this has been great. I think we hit a lot of information here, but let me just ask you, Fred, I'm going to give you the floor, give you the final word. Is there any closing thoughts, anything you'd like to share with our vast listening audience?
Well, yeah, recently I heard Harry Truman quoted, and I really like this quote. It may not be exact, but the quote is, "It's amazing how much we can accomplish if we don't worry about who gets the credit."
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And to me, that means just get in there and just work and share, and instead of fighting for credit, just do your bit, and karma somehow comes around. So,
that's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay, with that, Fred, let me thank you again for your time and for your service to the industry and PBSA, and I really appreciate you having you here on the show today.
Well, honored to be here and speaking to a legend of the industry who's written the book on the industry. Thank you so much.
Right. Well, some days are better than others, I guess, but it's been a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, again, our background pro today, and with some great stories and a lot of things that I certainly didn't know. Thank you, Mr. Fred Giles. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, that was yet another wonderful conversation with a background screening pro. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an update. And hey, if you got a moment, we'd love for you to leave us a review. It really helps get the word out. For more info or to catch up on past episodes, or to make suggestions or to suggest possible future guests, head over to our website. Once again, this is your host, Les Rosen, and it's been a pleasure to bring you another episode. See you on the next episode. Thanks.